Recording in progress.
Councilmember Orr?
Here.
Councilmember Wilson?
Here.
Councilmember Woodall?
Here. We're coming back from closed session and we took no action. There is nothing to report. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a minor change in the order of the agenda items. I just want to announce it. We're going to move the scope of work agreement with GHD up to be right after our audit report. With that, we will move on to public presentations. This time is for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council or staff is not allowed under the Ralph M. Brown Act. Items requiring council action not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Would anybody in the audience like to make public comment on anything not on this agenda? Okay, do we have any hands raised? Do we have any emails? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. Is there any council member who wishes to remove something from the consent calendar? No. Any member of the public wish to remove anything from the consent calendar? Hands raised, emails? Yep. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? I move to. I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second, please vote. Whoa. They put it back to the right way. All right, motion passes 4-1.
No. Oh, let's go back.
Or 0, sorry, the red lights threw me off. Reports and staff communications, page 36 on our packets, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Porter and members of the council. Just a quick update on Measure Z. The Chief of Police has submitted an application for Measure Z. It went through 2 or 3 meetings with the Measure Z committee as they sifted through the different priorities for the available funding, which is limited and will likely continue to grow more limited over time. So while we came in very, very close, but we didn't make the recommendation for the Measure Z committee. So the committee, our request was about $80,000 for Measure Z. And the available amount that was left over is about $45,000. And so the Measure Z committee decided to stick with their recommendations and forward their recommendations onto the Board of Supervisors on May 7th for their consideration. And then the board would have the discretion over the remaining $45,000 as to where it would go. And so certainly would invite any council member interested in going to that board meeting on May 7th to advocate for the Measure Z, the remainder of the Measure Z funding. And if so, let me know, and we'll let you know more of the details of the expected time that would be heard at the Board of Supervisors chambers, and we'll go from there. But anybody would be welcome. Multiple council members would be welcome to attend. Also on May 3rd, the city is going to be hosting the Redwood division of the League of California Cities. So that's every city to the north of Cloverdale in Lake Mendocino. Cloverdale's in Sonoma County. And Humboldt, obviously, in Delaware County. So there'll be meeting for business at the fire hall, and then also eventually ending up at the Scotia Lodge, along with the tour of one of our campus facilities. Staff is looking into the update for our emergency operations plan for the city. It is on our radar to update this particular plan and move it forward. However, I'm a little bit concerned because some of the other entities are doing the work in-house, and it's quite a chore potentially to do, but we're still looking for a consultant to assist us with that process, along with the fire district integrating and making sure that we're also integrated with the Humboldt OES plan. So our bids for the water SIP project are due on the 18th, so that's coming up. We're very excited to see finally some numbers on that particular project. And then after that, we should be getting some bids a few weeks later on our Eel River Trail project. So we're looking forward to that. I also did some research on our LED sign, just because it is approaching the 9 years of age mark. And while it's performed very well, it was installed for an astonishingly low amount of money to put in there. The ability to display messages on there is very limited. So you have to use abbreviation and whatnot. And so I've done some preliminary research, and we'll present it during budget time as to whether the council wants to do basically a total upgrade on the LED sign to kind of a more modern standard that would be able to display more information for the council, for the city, and for the community in general. With that, I have nothing else to highlight, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, city manager. Councilmember Woodall, any questions on the staff report?
Well, yeah, I don't know who would answer it. I saw that they were having a birthday event down at the fire hall. They're gonna have music and,
It's on Sunday.
yeah, so is that something that the city, I mean, did they need to get permits or anything to do that? I just thought it was either probably the fire department that would.
I'm happy to jump in on that one. So that event is, my understanding is mostly held on fire district property. And so at this point in time, I would say that we want to be informed of the date of the event. And then if there are some complications with this year's event, then that would involve more coordination with the city. Then next year we would have that conversation with the fire district about making that, application. So we'll kind of monitor this event, and if there are traffic implications that we didn't anticipate, or something along those lines where it impacts beyond the fire district property, then we would adjust from there for the following year.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
That's it. Councilmember Orr, any questions on the staff report?
No question.
Councilmember Wilson?
No question.
And I have no questions, so we can go ahead and move on to special presentations and study sessions. We are on presentation JJA CPA Inc. on the city's audited financial statements, fiscal year 2022-23, page 43 in our packets. And I'll turn it over to the city manager again.
I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our finance director, Mr. Travis Single.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Carter and members of the City Council. Each year, an independent auditing firm audits and prepares financial statements for the City of Rio Dell in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and the standards for financial audits contained in government audit standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Those standards require that an audit be performed to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement. The city received an unqualified opinion, and no material weakness was identified. An unqualified opinion means that the auditor has concluded the financial statements were presented fairly, and the results of the city's operations and its financial position according to generally accepted accounting principles. A material weakness is one or more deficiencies in internal control. Internal control is where a reasonable possibility exists that a material misstatement will not be prevented, detected, or corrected in a timely manner. The auditor found no such weaknesses. The auditing firm JJA CPA Inc. will present to the council the fiscal year 2022-2023 audited financial statements and accompanying information. I'd like to introduce Brett Jones from JJA CPA.
All right, thank you, Travis. You pretty much covered everything for me. So my name is Brett Jones. I was the engagement manager on the audit this year. As Travis mentioned, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion that we can give. So that's really great news. That's what you want to hear. Just want to briefly go over what our responsibilities are in the audit. We exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism. That means we are independent of the city. We don't perform any management functions or make any management decisions. We identify any risk of material misstatement in the financial statements and focus our audit procedures on those risks. And our procedures typically consist of tests of transactions and validation of account balances. Additionally, we obtain an understanding of the internal controls of the city. So we'll interview staff and identify the key controls of the city and perform tests on those controls. And as Travis mentioned, we don't have any findings, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. We also evaluate the accounting policies and the estimates made by management. So we have no findings there. All the accounting policies were appropriate and the estimates made by management were reasonable. Additionally, we look do determinations if there's any going concerns about the city. Is the city going to go out of business or go bankrupt or anything like that? And we have no concerns there to report. So just to briefly go over the format of the financial statements, you'll find the management's discussion and analysis on pages 4 to 17. This section provides a narrative overview and analysis of the financial activities of the city. This section is prepared by management and is a great section to read through to get kind of an overview of the financial activities of the city during the year. After the MD&A are the government-wide financial statements, starting with the net position on page 21 and the statement of activities on page 22. The government-wide financial statements provide information about the city's financial position as a whole, including the capital assets and long-term liabilities on a full accrual basis, similar to what you'll find with private companies. In addition to the government-wide statements, there are the fund-based financial statements. Those start with the balance sheet on page 26 and the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance on page 29. The fund financial statements focus on near-term inflows and outflows of spendable resources and the balances of spendable resources at year-end. These statements are useful for evaluating the city's near-term financial requirements. So after the financial statements, you'll also find the notes starting on page 45. The notes provide additional information about the city's significant accounting policies and some supplementary information and disclosures of the city's account balances. So in addition to the financial statements, we also issue a communications letter to the board. This used to be called the management letter, and this provides additional information about the audit process. It explains what our responsibilities are to the financial statements. This letter would disclose any significant difficulties we had in the audit, and there were none to report. Additionally, if we had any material correcting audit adjustments, they would be disclosed in this letter. We don't have any to report. And lastly, if there was any disagreements with management, we would also outline that in the letter, and we had no issues there as well. So overall, the audit went very well this year, as we've kind of come to expect with the city. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on the audit process that the council may have.
Thank you. I will turn it to the council for questions. Councilmember Orr, any questions on the financial audit?
No question.
Councilmember Wilson,
No questions.
Councilmember Woodall.
No,
I have no questions. Thank you so much for, I read this. And it's a lot. So, I'm glad that we have no findings. That's always a wonderful, wonderful news. Any questions from the public? Any hands raised? Any emails?
and I have just a comment.
A comment?
Travis, thanks so much, for you and your staff. I mean, that's really great. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And this is just a receive and file, so we can move on. Is that right? Okey doke. Well, here we're into the agenda order switch. We are gonna go to special call items, community affairs, and start with the scope of work agreement with the engineering firm GHD in the amount of $210,000, $839 for the Banner Street wastewater upsizing project, page 170 in our packets. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter and members of the council. The city's wastewater treatment plant finished construction in 2013, and there's the collection system is essentially divided into two main segments that is divided by Davis Street. So essentially 50% of all of the wastewater collected in the city goes in through the north side of the plant, and roughly 50% goes into the south side of the plant. The north side is particularly problematic, as the council is well aware, that the final segment into the wastewater treatment plant really does not maintain at least a 1% grade, which is the minimum standard for moving water generally by gravity. It also has a number of dips where essentially sections of the pipe are always submerged in water. And it requires, the siphon effect to pull water back up and into the plant. So it's very inefficient, very, older design that needs to be replaced. The complication overall with this that adds just to the general need for this facility to be replaced is that at the end of Painter Street is a manhole that is the lowest manhole on the system. And so when we do have overflows, that is the common location for that to occur because it is on the lowest section of the piping system. So for a number of years now, we've been aware of the problems in this area and the need to address them. The cause is primarily what's called inflow and infiltration, I&I, which is essentially just water that gets into the pipes beyond what you would flush down a toilet or down a sink or in your shower. And so these I&I events typically occur after ground saturation, so after the first couple decent rains in the area, and then during major rain events where you have 2 to 2.5 inches of rain, you start to see sanitary sewer overflows in this location. Now, in the red state regulations, any material water that leaves a sewer system, a sanitary sewer system, is considered raw sewage. But we do want to just qualify this that practically speaking, the cause of the I&I is just rainwater saturating into the pipes through sewer laterals and whatnot. And so while technically, legally, it is a sanitary sewer overflow, the dilution there means you can go down to the site and not smell anything and not even particularly see any material. That's the level of the volume of material of water coming down into the piping system. So the council over the years, at the kind of the urging of the State Water Board, has instituted a number of policies One being, we were one of the first agencies on the North Coast to implement, or in our region, implement a sewer lateral replacement policy. So essentially, at the time of sale of a house, your sewer laterals to be inspected and replaced if necessary in order to prevent that additional water from entering the system, which then has to be treated. So the city has made significant improvements over the years. I think we've engaged in somewhere near overall total of 200+ sewer lateral repairs, which definitely pre-earthquake demonstrated vast improvement on the system. And however, the earthquake kind of set that needle back. And so we have additional damages to the collection system that are hard to identify or locate. Some of them may be on private property, some of them may be the fund's responsibility. So specifically with the Painter Street upsize, this project has been on our radar for a number of years. Originally kind of developed by Randy Jensen and myself as a way to alleviate the SSO issue, because nobody wants SSOs, and we want to get this situation corrected. So there's been a lot of work done over the years to secure planning grants for this project from the state of California, from the Water Board, to move it forward. And certainly the earthquake helped us, and we appreciate the assistance of Senator McGuire in terms of helping to nudge the Water Board into prioritizing this project. And it is my understanding, despite the state's financial situation, that this is on their top of their list of projects to be funded. And I've heard that from multiple state representatives, that this is like one of the priorities on the North Coast. And we hope so. So particularly with this project, we were hoping, based on some prior conversations, that we would be funded sometime in the first quarter of this year. And then we were informed that no, we would have to wait until June. So the problem associated with the June award date is that then allocates the money for engineering services to get to our final, biddable design, which has to be completed in order to meet the state's requirements. So this work has to occur, but if it occurs starting July 1st, we probably won't be able to get it out to bid for another 2 or 3 months, meaning we would likely go through another wet season without any work being done, just given our lengthy rainy season here that delays almost virtually every type of construction that we engage in here at the city. So this item is coming forward to the council as a way to continue pushing this item forward, regardless of the funding delays that we have received from the state, which have been more than one, and gets us to a position where potentially we could be bidding this project out in the new fiscal year early enough that it potentially could be constructed before the rainy season. It's the best shot that we have in order to do that. So there are a couple different ways that we could do this. And right now it looks, the state has given us some assurances that we can use remaining sanitary sewer evaluation study funds, which is a separate grant, in order to do the remaining work that needs to be done on getting us to the final bid arrangement. So with that, we feel that this is a very high priority project. It is stressful to staff to deal with SSOs. It is embarrassing to the city. It is not good for the environment. We want to have this situation addressed as soon as possible. And we hope that our partners at the state understand that we cannot do this without them and without their help. So we are recommending moving forward with the current scope of services. As a side note, I will also mention that yesterday we were served by the State Water Resources Control Board a notice of violation for one of our recent discharges. So The notices of violation, we have had these before. They're very lengthy, time-consuming processes where we have to kind of go back and forth with the state, where we potentially face fines and penalties in the amount of potentially $10,000 a day. That would be borne by the ratepayers to operate the system, to continue under our current permit to operate the system. So we're hopeful that the state will understand the overall situation and understand that one division really needs to fund this project so that we can move forward. But we are working on this particular notice of violation. We'll be having a big meeting on Friday to go over it with staff and develop our response strategy to the notice of violation. And really our response really is, I think, going to be predicated on that we have the plan, we know the solution, and what we need is state funding to make it happen. And once it happens, I'm not saying that we will never have an SSO ever again, but this particular problem will be greatly alleviated. And the water coming through the system will at least receive some level of treatment before being discharged. So again, this is a key component to this. We have avoided a notice of violation for these SSOs in the past, again, because we were doing the sewer lateral replacement ordinance and enforcing it. And we have made a number of investments into the collection system itself on our own, including repairs on Oval Avenue, on Riverside. Sections of the system were already replaced. We've done some enhancements on Fern Avenue. We've done cammering of the system, some of which needs to be completed again. We've tried to reduce the number of 90-degree bends in the final segment of the piping system. And of course, we are undergoing the sanitary sewer evaluation study that will outline the overall strategy for our collection system, which kind of remains the last untouched, uninvested segment of the system. And we know that the rates here in Rio Dell are very high and that we cannot afford to pick this bill up on our own with the ratepayers. We've made this case multiple times with the state, including asking for debt for forgiveness. We've not received those assurances, but moving forward, we appear to be eligible for 100% grant funding on multiple different projects, which is great news because that used to not happen. It was always a 25% roughly match, which is still very expensive. So again, the item before you today is to fast track this to make us available to give us the best shot for construction and solution of this particular issue. So that we can move on to implementing the overall sanitary sewer evaluation study recommendations, figuring out the financing for those projects, and working on other projects in the future. So I thank you for listening through that. It's a little bit lengthy, but it's a very important topic. And so what we have here today is Rebecca Crow, our city engineer with GHD, who's here to answer any questions that the council may have on this important subject. And so I will go ahead and see if Rebecca can give us kind of a little bit of the technical overview, and then Rosa can pull up a map just so that people are really clear on what this project is and where it's located. So. And it'll just take a minute to pop up here because the system has a slight delay on it from when Rosa clicks the button and it actually does something.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter and Council for having me here tonight. This is a little bit of a last minute figure that I pulled from our project work. So it's not the most ideal for presentation at a council, but essentially what this figure shows is and again, Sunshine, feel free to chime in if there's anything I get wrong or you need to correct. But essentially it shows the portion of the pipeline that the Painter Street Line project is proposing to replace. So essentially we're upsizing this line. So what happens is you can see, in that figure on the far left, there's that little box. That's gonna be your staging area, and essentially that's where the Painter Street manhole is, that when, we get a lot of rainfall here and you get high groundwater and you get some infiltration of rain into your sewer, that's the location that the city staff is at, really trying to manage. And both Sunshine and your previous staff have done an amazing job, in the past. They're out there at midnight, they're out there at, all times of the day. So really, this project is intended to both keep the city in compliance, but also just help manage, help the city staff to manage their time better, right? They want to be able to sleep at night, and every time it rains, they don't want to have to be stressing out. So essentially we'd be upsizing that line from that, square, that hatch square that you see, then all the way to the wastewater treatment plant. For the most part, so this alignment, for the most part, is within existing city easements. So it's where it's going over long overflow areas. Those are existing city easements. There is a chunk where it's connected to some homes. So there's some work we need to do there to finalize permissions to replace that. Again, you may have come across it before the city, was built out over many parts over a long period of time. So some areas of the systems are really obvious, and some areas we need to do some updates. But as part of, we leveraged the SSES grant, or the Sanitary Sewer Evaluation Study planning funding that Kyle mentioned, to move this project forward to the point where we've got the environmental compliance covered, we've got the conceptual design covered, we've completed the easement and the property owner analysis. So essentially, we've confirmed where the city's easement is for the existing properties, and we're proposing to essentially replace the pipe within the existing easement, but at a larger size. So when the sewer flows hit that one manhole, they've got more space to get to your treatment plant. And one of the things that Kyle mentioned, we're trying to leverage this sanitary sewer evaluation study as a backup plan or assurance that if we move forward with this, that the city will get reimbursed, because it's, this is a larger project, and we're definitely very concerned about making sure that anything that we move forward for will get reimbursed with the state. As Kyle said, when we talk to our day-to-day grant contact for this project, a woman named Gerlene, she's like, this is my #1 project. I'm told every day, this is my #1 project, but we have no assurances until the city has a funding agreement in place. But the city does have a funding agreement in place for the sanitary sewer evaluation study. We have confirmed with the state board that the city moves forward with design for this piece of the study that is eligible for reimbursement under the existing executed planning study. And the goal, again, is to try and get ahead of the curve in terms of time. If the state board comes through, like they say, come June, July, the city gets a funding agreement for construction, we want to be ready to be in a place to put the project out to bid. So the intent tonight of the design agreement is to try and capture some time, try and get ahead, and try and get the project constructed. Like Kyle mentioned, there's no guarantees. There may be some unknowns that come into it, but this is probably the best chance that we have of getting that project design moved forward so that we can get it out of construction to try and get ahead of the 2025 rainy season. If there's questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And sometimes if there's anything I missed or anything that you have, please feel free to provide.
Okay, so thank you, Councilmember Woodall, do you have any questions?
No.
Councilmember Orr, do you have any questions?
Just a quick one. So the design portion of it is funded.
The design portion of it is reimbursable
Reimbursed.
up to 90% design through the sanitary sewer evaluation planning study. And that funding agreement has been provided to the city and has been executed. So up through 90% design, we have assurance that the city can get reimbursed.
But what we're designing it for may or may not, that's still #1 priority, but
We've got a separate funding application for construction. So the goal is to leverage the fact that you have the approved planning funding in place We recently went through the process to get a time extension and a funding increase for that planning grant. And so that funding increase included about $625,000 just for design. So the design portion of the scope in front of you would come out of that if the other project doesn't come through.
Councilmember Wilson, any questions?
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's approved it's applied for in the funding of the grant, it's just, we need the money to do it, to get it done, to meet the time frame. And so that's where we're trying to get this money to you. We have to come up with the other money that, Mr. Knox said out of existing grant, so we can pay you, so that we're ahead of the game when it all shows up.
Yeah, so there's two funding processes going on right now. The first, like Kyle mentioned, is the planning grant. And the city requested a time and funding extension, and that has been granted and executed and been sent to the city. The other funding that we're pursuing is for construction of the Painter Street application, or the Painter Street improvements. We do not have a funding agreement in hand for that portion of the project, but we have cross-checked with the state board to say, hey, in this original planning study, which is intended to improve the sewer collection system and intended to improve its overall operation, and one of the, like we've talked about, one of the city's #1 projects is upgrading this painter line. We've confirmed with them, would design of this painter line be reimbursable under the existing grant that you have? And they have confirmed yes. So answer your
That's
question.
basically, just for clarification, because this one's been going on for, I think, before Mr. Knox was here.
We submitted our initial application for the sanitary sewer grant in 2017, and we submitted the initial application for the Painter Street application in the beginning of 2022.
But
So,
I think there was discussion, maybe Julie would remember, even before that, we came up with a number and we thought, yeah, we'll be able to fix it for whatever it was, $10, I don't know, it was a really reasonable thing. And then we came back and it was like $1 million. And so this effort's been going on, I would say, a decade or so of trying to do all these things. And it's great to see that we're getting there. Yeah, and I agree with, again, the city manager, I don't want to see us miss this opportunity for another winter. Weather patterns seem to be changing back to the traditional Humboldt County where it's going longer and we're getting the water, and there's places, the other supervisors here can attest that when it pours rain, there's one spot that a house that I was involved with where they actually had an artesian well under their house, where the water came out of the sewer line and came out of the sewer because of it was raining, and as it quit raining, you watch the artesian well go down, it stopped. And because of the fact that there's so much water coming off the rain. And this will really be a big improvement to get us to where we're not doing those kind of crazy things. So thank you for the effort of all the entities of staff and GHD, and look forward to seeing this completed. Thank you.
Thank you. I also very much look forward to seeing this completed before the next rainy season. I was gonna say, Lord willing, the creek don't rise, but we've got all these rising water funds. So back to Councilmember Moore's question about the design. Is that part already done?
we have a concept design that was prepared and funded. Actually, we retroactively were able to fund it
Right.
through the sanitary sewer evaluation grant. So right now it stands at a conceptual design. So the effort before you is to take it from conceptual design to bid ready plans.
And so when we, vote on this, let's say, that's what you're waiting for, to go ahead and move it along.
Correct. We had
Okay.
submitted some stuff earlier, but
Right.
the concern was if the state doesn't
Sure.
end up funding the Painter Street project, that would leave the city in the hole for this
Right.
design effort.
Oh, we don't want that.
Fortunately, we've been waiting 2 years
Oh, yeah.
plus, or a little less than, for the amendment on the planning study. And so then we confirmed with the state board that, hey, the intent of this planning study is to improve the sewer system.
Right.
We've added a specific line item for design. Wouldn't the Painter Street design be eligible, and they have confirmed that yes, it's eligible.
Okay, so that part is good to go. My other question is about the very final page, where it lists out the rates of everybody who'd be working. Is this every single person assigned to this project specifically?
No, this is a standard GHD rate table.
Okay.
One of the things, and Travis can speak to this, is that we've just been trying to be really more consistent and more transparent with how we've been working with the city. Typically, what you see on your projects, if you look at that rate schedule, is the, A3 through essentially A10 kind of folks are typically the ones that work on your projects. But what if somebody else worked on your project? I just wanted to be really clear so that if we go back for auditing, we have a really clear record. But for the most part, the city would just be looking at that A3 through about A10. And we also went through a significant process, and you'll find this reflected. We recently submitted on the city's on-call proposal. So on-call proposals were due last week, the 10th, and went through a rigorous effort on our side to look at what's a reasonable rate for GHD to be charging our local clients. So the numbers in here reflect a discount from GHD's standards of US rates in recognition of our local climate and things like that. So that's where we're at.
I was just
wanted to be very specific.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were gonna get A1, 2, and 3, that we're paying them 40 hours a week for all 3 of them to be here.
No, those are really senior experts, and what we've done, what we've seen from our analysis is typically we're not pulling in those types of people on your project. I mean, again, we're typically seeing essentially that A3 through A10 level participating in your project, but wanted these full rates.
No, I appreciate that. I wanted to.
It's a great question.
Make clear, right. How feasible is it, do you think we can get this done in 12 months? What did it say, 4 months for planning, 6 months construction?
So I have pulled in some folks knowing that we would be on a tight schedule, that have availability and have expertise to review. So I think we're able to essentially meet the deadlines in this, what's in this proposal. What I can't necessarily predict is, right, go out to bid, hopefully, and then we get a contractor on board, and ideally, we would be done, come October, November of this year. It's not a very complicated project, but
it doesn't seem super duper complicated, but yeah, I know that, famous last words, everything looks simple on paper. Yeah, I'm a bargain shopper. What can I do? I'm asking around. And then you're proposing to start in July 1st, and that is another fingers crossed, really, really hoping that we get funding in June. Okay. If we get funding earlier, can we start bidding earlier?
Essentially, there's a certain amount of time that it takes for us to do design and a fact check with our, with our folks. So I think that advertised for construction is a date that we have in our proposal assumes that we would be getting funding in June. I think what would end up delaying it is if the state board sort of drags their feet and we don't get confirmation for funding. We can still put the project out to bid, we can still get bids, but we're not gonna wanna initiate construction until you have.
I wouldn't want that either.
If they give approval sooner, I still think that these dates are valid, just to ensure that we have enough time to get, the design.
Fingers crossed, eyes, toes, all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it for me. Do we have questions for GHD from the members of the public in the audience? Anybody? Any hands raised? Any letters? Or emails in letters, like it's 1850. Okay, do I have a motion to authorize the city manager to, what is the phrasing? To accept the scope of work with GHD?
Execute this.
Execute the scope of work. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Motion and a second, please vote. And passes 4-0. Okay, moving on, thank you, Rebecca, to our second special call item, which is receive and discuss a potential parks master plan, which is on page 158 of our packet. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter and members of the council. So Community Development Director Kevin Caldwell has put together a nice written report kind of covers some of the basics of it. I'm not gonna reiterate what has been in the report, and hopefully the council's had time to review it and look it over, but it kind of covers some discussion items of what currently is in the inventory of parks, some of which are owned by the city, very small segments. But that most of your community parks in the city of Rio Dell, two of them, the two primary ones are owned by not the city. So Fireman's Park owned by the fire district, and then the Davis Street Park is owned by the school district. And so those are kind of the two largest traditional areas in the community. In the past, the city has looked at acquiring the Davis Street Park into our inventory of properties and for future development, access to grant funding, even to the point that we had a surveyor's map developed for that particular location. There had been an older joint use agreement for that facility. It is, as the council is well aware, very poorly written and really only requires this of the city the maintenance of the grass turf of the property. That agreement is going to be expiring very soon. The city has issued termination notices to the school district regarding that property, but we still do continue to send city staff to just do the basic turf maintenance on there for the facility. So there are a number of other potential sites where there could be expansion of park facilities. However, because there already are two existing park facilities, we may have some disadvantage in terms of acquiring grants in the sense that most of the park development grants that come available are looking at park deficits. So there's a factor that goes into judging a grant, and that's, are there pre-existing parks? So the state doesn't want to provide grants to, create a third park where two already exist, or that sort of thing. And so the criteria for that can range from application to application, but it can be difficult for the city to go out on its own to acquire a grant for acquisition or development of a property when there are already pre-existing ones. So, this conversation was generated by the mayor pro tem. Initially, the council directed that it come to the public agenda, and I know that the mayor pro tem has been out and interacting with the fire district and with the school district to see if there's an interest just in coming up with a general new plan and new strategy for community facilities, parks in this community, not necessarily the city of Rio Dell, but for the community. And the past practice, I think, has been it doesn't really work well. In the past practice has been various state grants come up. The city might make application, the fire district might make application to build a capital project, but then the maintenance of those facilities tends to fall to the wayside. And so hence why several of the facilities are not in the greatest condition, or basically in the case of Davis Street Park, they're largely tear down facilities. So we need to think strategically. And I think one of the key points of this is really to start at a very basic level, try to build some consensus as to conducting a study and figuring out truly what the community wants with an adequate survey, not that does extensive outreach to find out what the community can build consensus on in terms of moving forward. And I think that will help provide a number of benefits to the parks themselves over the long term. And I think that's really the key, is coming up with the next long-term strategy of where do we want to be 20 years from now? And what is the consensus between the city, the fire district, the school district as to what that might look like, so that we get everybody on board. You know, parks should be, you know, a consensus item, at least to move that ball forward, depending on the interest to the subject. Again, Mr. Caldwell has put together a good starting point report for you, and I'll see if Kevin has anything else to add to that. Did you have anything to add to that, Kevin?
You know, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. You know, it's easy to find locations for parks. It's fairly easy for the most part, the grant funding for acquisition. It's the maintenance funding that's always an issue when it comes to community parks, city parks. We're in a situation here, which is kind of not really unique, but a lot of bigger cities, a lot of their parklands were gifted to them.
Right.
By wealthy citizens of those communities. And I'm not sure if we've gotten any parks that were given to us. Maybe Fireman's Park was given to the fire district, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that we haven't been a benefit of, so to speak. As the council may remember, when there was some Prop 68 money available 3 or 4 years ago, we reached out to the Ellie Waters who owned the property down at the foot of Davis Street. They were on the south side, and they were not interested in selling at that time. So you do have to have
Right.
property owners that are interested. If we do identify a park location, for example, that would be willing to sell the property to the city, or even better yet, give the property to the city. You know, again, the big issue is community engagement. And then once we identify those locations, the type of facilities the committee would like to see, go out and grant money for acquisition, and then to identify funding sources to help maintain the parks. And that's difficult to do in a small community, especially in a small community that doesn't see a lot of new growth. In communities that see new growth, they've got this high assessed property values. You know, so they're generating a lot of their income through those high assessed property values. Or many communities, more progressive communities, have what's called a benefit assessment district. And that is hard to sell in a community like Rio Dell, which is considered a disadvantaged community, financially anyway. But the first step is to engage the community.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think we want to start at the very, you know, basic level of this, and of trying to see where we can build consensus. But really, primarily from staff perspective, I think the most value added input that we could receive right now is the input from the individual council members. And then for many members of the public who are here, and really let you guys drive the discussion and set the stage for kind of the next time we meet on this particular subject. So with that, I'll return it to the Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you, both City Manager and Community Development Director Caldwell. I want to also start by thanking 2 members of our Fire District Board of Directors who are here tonight, and I'm really happy to have you guys here. I asked for this to be placed on the agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and talk first. And I know it's not how we usually do things, but that's what I'm doing tonight. Parks are a direct reflection of the quality of life and the health of any given community. I do think the first thing people look for when they decide where they're moving is, what's the school like? What are the kids gonna do? And I think that where Rio Dell has made leaps and bounds and come a long way in many, many ways, that is one that we could stand to do a little bit better on. This Parks Master Plan is playing the long game here. I don't think that by moving forward with the master plan that magically tomorrow we're all of a sudden gonna have a bunch of parks. I wanna make that very clear. I'm optimistic, but I'm also realistic. With our joint use agreement expiring at the school, and I just, if we're gonna make any big moves, we need this Parks Master Plan. That is what will then govern how we do things, right? This is where we really put it all on paper. It's a lot like our climate action plan with the county and things like that. So I do think community engagement is the most important thing. I would love to do a survey of the, you know, a statistically valid survey, however many people that is for our population, and really, really hear from the public about what types of amenities they'd like to see, what sizes parks that they like, things like that. So that when and if we get an amazing opportunity, we are ready. And even if a parks master plan sits on a shelf for a bit, we have it when we need it. This Gateway Beautification, Dog Park, the Eel River Trail, these are all things that we did and that sat on a shelf for a while. But boy, when we needed them and the opportunity came, we were ready to go. So that's why I want this, is because it has worked for us in the past to have something on a shelf that we're ready to go. Generating a survey, I do, there's many ways to do that, I won't go into that. I do have help on board though. I have somebody who's willing to help us do the statistics part of it, which is awesome. It is very, very important to me and to staff and I probably everybody that this survey is generated with all interests of all these various entities as a team. I could say, let's go out and just have the city do a survey, but I think it's much more important to have the fire district involved, to have the school district involved. So that it really, really is a reflection of what the whole community wants as much as possible. And I think it's just a valuable teamwork and all that stuff. And it should not just be a natural disaster when those three entities come together and work on something. So that is why I invited you all here tonight. What I would love to do is move forward on this and form an ad hoc committee that encompasses city council, the fire district board of directors, and the school district, the school board. That's my end goal for now. That's my short-term vision, is that we all get together, we all meet, we all generate a survey. I bring down a math person who can help us phrase it and help us make sure that the data is easier to analyze than, like, certain phrasings of questions are easier to generate a nice little pie chart. And I think all of that will look much better on a grant application. And I think we've got to really come together as a community and make this happen. So obviously I am a huge fan of moving forward with a parks master plan, even though it won't mean that something's gonna happen tomorrow, but we'll be ready when we need it. Because this community really does need more parks. And even if it's just beefing up the parks that we have. And I do think there's a way to have stuff that's not super high maintenance. That wouldn't necessarily need a district, you know, I mean, and I'm not gonna say all the things that I want to park, because I don't want to influence people, but I do think that there's a way to beef up our parks or acquire places and put features on them that do not require tons of maintenance and that we could afford to handle. That is my take. I'm gonna pass it on now to Councilmember Woodall. Thoughts, comments, questions?
I think it's important for a town to, I lived in the Midwest, and every little town you went to, they had a community park. And it was nice. People gathered there in the evening, they barbecued. It was just, it was a nice bringing the community together. And I think we're right. We need to start at the very beginning, get people's input, and as you mentioned to me, the school kids input.
Yes.
And maybe even involve them.
I would love to have the student body president of that school and maybe the vice president on it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's gonna take a while. It's not 6 months from now
Yeah.
we're gonna have anything, but if you don't start, you don't ever end.
You got it.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodall. Councilmember Orr.
Just a quick thing, I know that, hardly a chance anyone's gonna get property for the parks, but I think a lot of it, these private landowners, when they approach them for the purchase, is clarity of what it's gonna be used for, because I know that one property on this list, when they were approached about it, it was the time the 355 Center Street project was going in, and they were afraid that that's exactly what it was gonna be used for if that was purchased. I know they were told part because we talked about it, but their concern was a multi-family Danco project over there. But yeah, parks, especially ones that are usable. I mean, I know we can use these parks for running and playing and stuff, but especially the school over there. As far as the maintenance of it, I'd be afraid to let my kids play on some of the stuff over there.
Absolutely.
And then Fireman's Park is great, as long as we can afford to maintain it. So So the whole problem with grants and, not giving them the places that already have parks, I think they need to consider usable parks. It's great to say we have parks, but if they're only that triangle over there on Riverside Drive, then which several of the occupants over there claim is theirs anyway, so, that was it for me.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, it's great to see something come together as a, well, this is long, but, that we get a formal structure, like say a master plan and where we're gonna go. We've talked about it, I know there's provision in different ordinance type stuff and the county things for parks. But one of the things that has been, I think, a lifeline to the city parks of Rio Dell, and just about every community you go into, you're gonna find a fireman's park someplace. And that was put together by usually the volunteers of that community that said, you know, when we're not out putting out fires, we're out here putting together something so we can enjoy our city. And so I'm very thankful for our fire department that it has developed the park that they have out here and has gone forward. And now we're working together, where in the past we didn't, the city and the fire department didn't work together real good. And so I know Councilmember Woodall and Mayor Garnes have worked with being liaisons to talk to your fire department and get the city staff involved. And even though it's not something we're asking to have more earthquakes, but the last earthquake I think was a big something for the city and the fire department to work together for the community. And so there's a lot more coalescence of our people here doing this, and to get it into a form where the city embraces it by having a master plan. And we're looking at, there's some other potential property, this one over here where the Enos and the property is over there, where there's big trees and stuff, and it's a lot of money. Hopefully, you know, there's always a chance that someone would gift something to the city, but that aside, it's encouraging to see the city and the community working together. So I'm behind this 100%, and all the things said so far is just great to see something come together. So thank you for all the work that's gone into this.
Thank you. Do we have comments from members of the public in the audience? Questions, concerns, thoughts?
I'd say so. My name's Joe Timmerman, and I'm a fire commissioner along with Mickey Barsoni. Excuse me, and the reason we're here, one of the reasons I'm here tonight is in support of this. A man came to our commissioners meeting and gave a presentation to us. And as the board, we fully support and we're willing to be a part of that commission, along with some great to get the school involved in it too because of their property.
Yes.
And as you know, the park that we have is not owned by the city, it's owned by the fire district. And so we're all for any kind of help and stuff that we can get. And I'm sure you guys are aware that we just bought new playground equipment through a grant. And the city was gracious enough to help us with $2,500, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it was greatly needed. So we appreciate that. So we do see as a fire district now that the city is trying to help, develop something for the kids and things. And that's our goal too, so we're in support of what.
We're on board.
What?
We're on board.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, part of our fire district, being volunteers, we're here for the community too.
Absolutely.
More so than a lot of people think. So it just sounds great.
We all know, I
It
think.
just sounds great what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you both so much for being here, and thank you for your comments. And I could sit here and kumbaya, but I talk to me after, please. Any hands raised? Any emails or letters?
Man, so if you are looking for big bill on that committee, I would be more than willing to represent.
That's what I was gonna ask you after.
Bill would or not.
But it's you too. Okay, wonderful. Please stay after. Let me get your email. I'll give you mine and we'll get to, because I want this I don't like waiting. I'm an impatient person. So yeah, I would love to get your contact information, so just don't leave without talking to me. Thank you, though.
So how are we going to pick an ad hoc committee for us? Because I'd like to be on it.
I mean, yeah. Kyle, how do we go about picking members of our board?
So, my recommendation is that we agendize an ad hoc committee
Yes.
for the next meeting.
Okay.
And then it would be the council that, makes that, ultimate decision.
Yes, wonderful. Do we need a vote tonight?
No, I think that is your direction to staff. If there's any other direction that you would like to provide to staff, now would be the time.
As of now, my direction to staff, this is me, is to, yes, absolutely, let's move forward with the Parks Master Plan and let's agendize that ad hoc committee on a special meeting tomorrow. No, I'm kidding. We can wait till the next meeting. I said, I'm impatient. So yeah, if we could please go ahead and agendize the ad hoc. That would be lovely. Thank you so much. Okay, member reports. Councilor Woodall.
I've been calling.
She's been eclipsing. Wonderful. Council member Orr.
I have HCOG tomorrow, so report to follow, but also spent time with Amy over at the community center yesterday. Still looking at earthquake damages and funding for it. If you have any questions, go see them. They've had a lackluster turnout for the many opportunities they have for funding. If you need help with unmet needs and stuff for the earthquake repair. So definitely call over there, get an appointment and go see them because it's worth the trip. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, I had a HWMA meeting and, they're still talking about this 1383 thing, and I know Rio Dell has been one of the more active ones participating. Some of the other communities aren't as far along on that. Eureka and Arcata are pretty much into it as the bigger cities, but some of the other ones aren't on board as much. And so that's coming. I think we have the ability to have a little bit of a delay, or what do you call a reprieve, because we're a small community, but it's still a lot of vague, and a lot of the stuff the state doesn't really put out well. We probably at some point need to have the executive director, Eric Keller, at some point, maybe when they get a little more information to clear direction, come down and give us a presentation so that we can understand what's really happening. And then the RCEA, I think, has a meeting. They moved the date because everybody's going to these different leagues and things. So they're having a meeting next week instead of the fourth week for the RCEA thing. And biomass is still there's a group that, I don't know if you see it in the news, Lost Coast or wherever. There's a group that's pretty adamantly against biomass. Particularly the power plant in Scotia. And anytime biomass is brought up, they're there to protest. And they want RCA to distance themselves and violate their, void their contract with them, which wouldn't shut the power plant down. They would just simply create different problems. So that's an ongoing topic.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson, I always want to thank you for you reporting back to us on SB 1383. You really alerted us to that very early on, and I appreciate your updates on that. So thank you. I have been to meetings. I have a REDIC meeting on Monday. I've been to a Chamber of Commerce subcommittee meeting. I'm not gonna expect big things from the chamber. Tides are changing over there. If you have questions, ask me. I've been to the fire district meeting. I've been to the school board meeting, meetings. I would also, Kyle, I'd like to request that at some point sometime soon, can we do a study session on Second Avenue? And just what it actually, I want to understand a little bit better what is working there and what some possible funding would be and what we would need for that. And I think it's too much for an open session. I'd love to do just like a council study session so we can all understand.
Yeah, one of the items that will be coming to your council soon is, and you may recall, we had a discussion 4 months ago or so about project study reports and doing some pre-work to set up future projects
Yes.
down the road. And so, right now, the plan is to have that conversation about Second Avenue, about the remainder of Oval, and then also a PSR potentially for Pacific and definitely for Davis Street, as a way of kind of being able to jump on funding opportunities quicker and more aggressively. In particular, as the federal infrastructure money rolls out, we want to make sure we have some projects in the queue that have some numbers based on it. So I think that would be the appropriate time, but we can always, hold a special meeting to discuss that. We are going to have budget meetings coming up here soon, so we could trailer something onto one
Sure.
of those meetings,
Yeah.
just to have that conversation, but it is on our radar.
I would like that if the rest of the council would like
Oh,
that.
definitely.
Julie's a yes.
It would, so it would be a study session though, not in a meeting.
A study session.
Yeah, we can do, if you want specifically a study session, or we can do a regular session.
I want both. I want to have all your time. I want to ask all the questions. I want to really understand. And then move into a public meeting where I feel like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you two? Is that okay? Okay, all right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? Anyone opposed? I'm kidding. Adjourn, meeting adjourned.
Good job.
Yeah.